Instagram Reels are fun and all, but I don't think watching a bunch of edits on loop and imagining my OCs in them is gonna help me with my creativity in the long run. One cannot live off of instant noodles every day. A girl like me gotta go fine dining sometimes, you know? So throughout the whole year, I logged everything I watched or played, and now I'll be ranking all of them. Also, part 2 for the pilot tier list is still on the way. This is just a fun break in between. My ass is not ready to watch 70 more indie pilots just yet. So starting off, we've got common side effects. I was initially put off from the art style, but I can confidently say that this has really well animated bits, and I've come to appreciate the style a lot since then. I really love the character interactions and the overall writing of the show. It's pretty good, very enjoyable to watch, but I did kind of forget about it since it's been so long. A tier. Trigun. I'm gonna go through the Trigun section quickly because I already talked about it before in a previous video, but please watch Trigun 1998. This is the kind of shit you watch and come out of it wanting to be a better person right after bawling your eyes out from the last 5 episodes. For a series that had to diverge from the source material over halfway through its runtime, it did an excellent job wrapping everything up in a nice bow, and I'd say it even excelled from the source material at times. S tier. Trigun, the movie. I didn't talk about this in my previous video because if I remember right, this was made in 2010 as extra content after Trigun became more popular in the West. You don't have to know anything about Trigun to watch this, but it's pretty entertaining and I like it a lot. A tier. The Trigun manga. I'll admit, I don't remember too much from the manga because I read it pretty fast for the video I had to make. The action was hard to read, and while it did get better later on, I ended up skipping it anyways for the sake of time. But Naitao is a very talented artist and character designer, and I think the direction the manga went is pretty cool. I'd love to someday have a one-to-one adaptation of it, and I definitely have to reread this again. A tier. Trigun Stampede. I don't like it. I was way too nice in my video. I really wanted to like Stampede, and I did initially, but it's got a lot of problems. And now that Stargaze is releasing episodes, I'm definitely going to make a follow-up video in the future and refine my thoughts there. C tier. Devil May Cry, the Netflix animated series. This was my first exposure to the Devil May Cry franchise. I went into it excited to see Dante killing demons and finally step my toes into Devil May Cry, but the show turned out to be more focused on Lady. I don't mind them going in that direction, but if doing that means the character you establish as pretty strong is constantly kidnapped, tased, and nerfed to focus on Lady, it's not that fun to watch, especially when Dante is a much more fun character to watch in my opinion. The overall direction of the show too is a bit weird. I wouldn't say it's bad, but I definitely wasn't a huge fan of it. B tier. DMC Devil May Cry. The Netflix series pushed me to really get into the games and figure out what was the deal behind Devil May Cry as a series, and I remember getting this game and telling a friend of mine who's a longtime DMC fan that I had gotten it, and he immediately told me to kill myself. You know who you are. That being said, I genuinely love this game. It's got good gameplay, level design, fun boss fights, and pretty good art direction. I really love the big bold text that pops up throughout the game. It's a great way to tell the player where to go, but also adds more tension to the moment. I've heard that the DMC fanbase collectively agreed that this is a solid game by itself and that it'd be a lot better if it wasn't a DMC game, which is completely fair, but I honestly think that because this is a DMC game, it makes it a whole lot better because it's really fucking funny. The game is clearly trying to be cool and edgy, but it's so corny and silly, and I highly doubt that was their intention, and that makes it a lot better. It's not every day where you get a game that has Virgil rocking a fedora and a Detroit Become Human outfit. My favorite parts of this game are where Virgil is telling Dante about their past while passing a bunch of graffiti that perfectly matches what he's saying, and also the time that Virgil sniped a fetus, waited for the mother to look and react, and then proceeded to snipe the mother as well. Like, genuinely, I want to know, like, who thought of that and how many people had to approve of that decision and go, yes, this is perfect for Virgil. Virgil after sniping a fetus. Now I'm motivated. A tier. Devil May Cry 1 to 3. I'm gonna lump all 3 of these together because they're sold together on Steam, and I'm gonna be going back and forth between them. So, overall, while I'm really happy I played these games, I don't ever want to do a full replay of them. Maybe. The first 2 games had me searching up walkthroughs pretty often because I genuinely didn't know where to go a lot of the time, and I hit a point where I just thought I was stupid. Thank God for YouTube comments though, we can all be stupid together. But in all seriousness, these games are awful at telling you where to go or what to do at times, and it's pretty easy to get lost almost all the time and having to walk so far back. I think DMC3 improved in this regard as far as I can remember, but the boss fights were generally a lot more infuriating in this game. DMC1's combat was really tiring with all the fucking camera angles it switched to, not to mention the final boss that would invert your controls for the first phase and then invert them again at the second phase. DMC2's combat was somehow even worse because not only did it have the same problems, but you don't even need to use your sword. Standing in place with a gun was more than enough most of the time. For the final boss, I genuinely just spent like 10 minutes chipping away at its health with my guns at a distance, and yeah. I'm really glad I started and finished DMC2 on the same day because oh my god was it ass, and I can't remember anything from this game. It definitely deserves the reputation of being the worst DMC game in the entire series. I've heard it's more enjoyable to play as Lucia, so I might try that sometime if I feel like indulging in some self-harm. Speaking of Lucia, aside from her design, she's a much more boring version of Trish. DMC1 didn't have too much of a story, but it did have a nice theme and message at the end of it, which was nice. DMC2 tried doing it again, but it did it a lot worse. I'm also pretty sad that Lucia gets completely discarded after this game, but DMC3, I think, had the best story in the series, maybe. It's a hard tie with 5, if I'm being honest. Story-wise, I like them both a lot, and the cutscenes in 3 were really, really cool. While these 3 games were incredibly frustrating to play, to the point where I looked at my brother sitting next to me and said with my full chest, "You should get a prize for making 3 dogshit games in a row," I can confidently say that I am happy to have played these, and I am totally not saying that through gritted teeth. So with all that being said, DMC1, A tier, DMC2, F tier, and DMC3, S tier. DMC4. Gameplay-wise, it was a huge improvement from its predecessors. DMC's gameplay would be really fun and then stupidly frustrating for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, but DMC4 was really good. I only needed to pull out a walkthrough a couple times for the jungle area, so huge improvement there. The story was also good, but I do have a couple nitpicks. For one, I don't like Gloria's design. On one hand, it's cool, but with all the camera angles the game uses, I've come to not like it. Then there's Lady, who shows up twice. I don't like her design here, as it feels a bit too fanservice-y and impractical for her fighting style. I feel like if she had the boob strap that Dante had in DMC3, it would have been a lot better. And I was also pretty disappointed with how Virgil didn't show up, but I'm mostly fine with that. Cause story-wise, there was already a lot going on, and I can't see how he'd fit in without making the game longer or bloated. Now, you may have noticed that I said I was mostly fine with this, and that is because the game does let you play with Virgil, and will even give you a new cutscene with him from the start, heading into Fortuna and passing by who would later become Nero's mother. But that is it. I feel like it was a bit of a missed opportunity to show what Virgil did during his time through some extra cutscenes here and there, but I also understand that would have needed more time and money, and I'm not familiar at all with how the production process went throughout all of these games, so I'm just a whittle upset. Another thing I'll add, Nero is a bit boring to play at times in this game because of his devil arm doing so much damage, and using it you get stuck in a mini cutscene while he does this, and it gets a bit boring after a while. I'm also just personally not into his gameplay style in both 4 and 5, but it's fine, especially since I get to play as Dante for the second half of the game. The last complaint I have is that during the final boss, there's a couple parts where you have to perfectly parry an attack with Nero's devil arm, and the game doesn't really give any indication of this as far as I could tell. Plus, for the last thing you have to parry, I feel like it was completely unnecessary and that they could have easily just continued the cutscene that was already going on. It was a real mood killer when the hype was being built up only for me to die and realize, oh, I was supposed to parry that with the devil arm. Oops. I know it sounds like I'm complaining a lot, but these are just some nitpicks, and DMC4 is all around a great game that I had a lot of fun playing with, and I really love how silly and whimsical it is, especially with Dante. I love the cutscenes with him in this game. A tier. DMC5. Unfortunately, I played this one after the New Year's, so I can't put it on the tier list, but if I could, I'd put it at S tier. And that concludes the DMC section of the video. I did start watching the old DMC anime recently, and I like it so far, but I'm only 4 episodes in, so I don't have much to say on that front. But moving on to Severance Season 2. I feel like with a lot of mystery stories, there's a point where you can clearly tell the writers hadn't planned the story too far ahead. Cough, Stranger Things, cough, The Servant, cough, cough. So as excited as I was for the second season of Severance with how long I waited, I was worried that they'd fall into that pit and not reach the peaks of Season 1. And I'm happy to announce that I was incredibly wrong. Local YouTuber is happy that they are wrong. That's great. Anyways, the eerie vibes of the show are still strong and present, and the writing in this entire season was amazing. I also love how the people working on this are clearly very invested in their craft. The actors do an awesome job, and the people behind the cinematography go to such crazy lengths for certain shots, and it's really cool to see creativity flourishing like that, especially nowadays. I also loved the promotional stuff they had done before the release of the season. I wish silly stuff like this was done more often. I'm very excited for the next season, and I hope the crew can take their time on it. S tier. Monster Hunter Wilds. I'll admit, I didn't finish this game, but I still went through a good chunk of it, so I'm putting it in anyway. It was really fun at the start, but I unfortunately got bored from the story and characters later on. Hunting monsters gets repetitive and stale pretty fast, even after trying to force myself to use traps, bait, and a couple other weapons to make it more interesting. It just didn't work. It's also a pain in the ass to connect and play with friends. I don't know if they fixed that. I hope they did. But I did really like the different weapons, fighting styles, and the really cool armor and sword designs you can get throughout the game. I am a bitch for customization. Although I don't personally like this game that much, I can definitely see the appeal, and it's overall pretty solid. B tier. Ina Dream Barbecue. It's got great visual direction, character designs, and music, which isn't a surprise since I've been an Ina fan for years. The game did feel like a walking simulator pretty early on, but for how short the first chapter is, I don't mind, plus it's free. But most of its charm is definitely thanks to the aesthetic and characters. The gameplay itself isn't something to write home about, but it was still a really cool experience, and I'm excited for future chapters. A tier. The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball Season 1. I was worried this was gonna be a boring cash grab, but I got pleasantly surprised. While I did like the season a lot, it did feel a bit rough, especially in the beginning, which is fair. The new voice actors for Gumball, Darwin, and Anais are good, but I feel like the voice direction could have been a bit better. Anytime they have to shout, it sounds weirdly quiet, and unfortunately that kind of persists in Season 2, but I haven't finished it. Other than that though, they're doing a great job, and I am by no means a voice actor whatsoever, so props to the kiddos. Overall, this first season was pretty nice, and I'm gonna place it at A tier. I also got to watch a good chunk of the second season recently. I'm not going to put it on this tier list, but so far it's been a lot better and funnier. Moving on to the next thing, Look Back. Before I had watched this film, I had already heard about Chainsaw Man and was surprised to hear that this film was based off of a one-shot Tatsuki Fujimoto made, and man, I did not know Fujimoto's game. This film had taken me aback, and I was in disbelief for a good while afterwards. I rewatched it pretty soon afterwards, and I even wanted to make a whole video on it, but my script just ended up mostly saying, movie good. Luckily, some parts did make it to the end of the Chainsaw Man video I made, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, I highly recommend people to watch this, especially if you're a fellow creative person. It's just below the 1 hour mark, and it'll suck you in real fast with its visuals. It was also cool to find out that the key animation and most of the animation was done by ex-Studio Ghibli animator Kiyotaka Oshiyama. The story behind how this was made is pretty cool, and I would definitely recommend reading about it. This reignited my passion for art a lot when I first watched it, and I can't wait to rewatch it again sometime. S tier. Overwatch. Awful. Awful. I hate Vendetta. She ruins my games. I want her gone. I don't like her. S tier. League of Legends. Despite my name, I am not a League player, but I did try it out to see how it would go. The game has a pretty steep learning curve, and I realized throughout the process that even if I were to go past that, it wasn't my thing, unfortunately. Matches start out pretty slow, and then the moment I start spacing out, it gets crazy fast. I can't speak much on the actual quality of the game since this isn't friendly to new players and I barely played it, so whatever rank I give it is just going to be based off of how much I liked it. I will say though that in that short period of time, I did manage to get attached to one character. Huion, my beloved, I miss you every day. But yeah, I will be putting it at D tier. The Amazing Digital Circus. I know there's still 2 episodes left of this, but I still wanted to put it in anyways. The show itself is pretty good, and I'm glad that each episode focuses on a different character while Pomni is still clearly the main character out of all of them. It's a pretty fun watch and I like it a lot. My only personal nitpick is that some of the jokes fall flat for me, and whenever the characters start having a deep discussion, it's a bit on the nose for me at times. It's a really small nitpick of mine though, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is a hot take of some sort, but again, overall, it's a great show, and I'm excited to see how it ends. A tier. Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4. I'll admit I wasn't the biggest fan of Chapter 3 initially. I love Tenna a lot, and it was a fun chapter, but I felt like it was pretty short and didn't have much to offer. It's a good thing it was released with Chapter 4, because if I had to wait after the ending of Chapter 3, I would have shat myself instantaneously. Chapter 4 has a lot of great moments, especially with Rousey and Susie, and the weird route has piqued my interest a lot more since then. Both of these chapters were great, so I will be putting Chapter 3 at A tier and Chapter 4 at S tier. Arcane Season 2. I already said a majority of my thoughts in a different video, and I'm pretty sure at the end of that video I said that despite its flaws, I'm fine that it exists. I don't agree with this anymore. Arcane was perfect with just its first season. We didn't need another, and it put a big old poo-poo stain on the series as a whole, unfortunately, because of its second season. So I'm putting it at E tier, which is what I would say if Netflix hadn't demonetized my video despite me sending a dispute, so I'm gonna dock it down to an F tier. Yes, I am still salty, fuck you. Supermarket Together. This was really fun to play, but once I hired a few employees, it lost all of my interest pretty quickly since none of the other goals were good enough to keep me hooked. And unfortunately, I also didn't care much for the customization options. B tier. Mob Psycho 100. This entire show is basically, hey, you know how those Instagram motivational posts tell you should like wake up at a regular schedule, work out, have friends, socialize, and like get hobbies? You know how they say that's how you be happy in life? Well, it's true. The animation's great, and I love Reagan a lot. Now that I've learned about this guy, I'm kind of pissed off that he lost his sands in the Tumblr sexy man war thing. My only complaint is that I wish there was more of Mob and Reagan doing silly side quests, but that is because I am a gluttonous creature. But I definitely recommend watching this. S tier. K-pop Demon Hunters. I really like this movie, but it's got its problems. I'm not gonna go over them too much because I think the general audience agrees that it really needed to be longer. But unfortunately, Netflix is a bitch and made the people who worked on this cut out a lot of things. I think the part that pisses me off the most is that allegedly Netflix didn't think this was gonna do well, which I find incredibly stupid. Yeah, guys, I don't think the movie about K-pop stars who also kill demons off stage is gonna do well. I don't know. But with that said, it was a fun watch. I still love most of the songs from it, and I'm glad it got popular. I hope we'll be getting some more films and not have to cut out 50 bajillion things. B tier. A Star is Born. It's well made, but I didn't care for it. It was too depressing for me and I didn't get much out of it. This isn't something I'd ever recommend, but again, it is well done in regards to the acting and cinematography, so for that I have respect and will put it at a generous C tier. Whatever. Sonic 3. This is definitely my favorite Sonic movie out of the entire trilogy. The other ones were good, but I wasn't crazy invested and I didn't care for the human side plots. But the third one knocks it out of the park. The best parts of this film definitely being Shadow's involvement and Jim Carrey's performance. The main trio were also fun to watch, and it's always a fun treat to hear Roger Craig Smith's voice acting. He does a great job, and I really miss him voicing Leo from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Guys, would I be delulu to think that it still might come back someday? No. Anyways, S tier. The Summer Hikaru Died. Really well directed with absolutely everything. The visuals, the soundtrack, the voice acting, everything here is great. I love the premise of this show and the overall story and tone, but I will admit that the lore got a little bit confusing for me. but that's probably because I watched it with a friend and we took some long breaks in between, so we forgot some stuff. But I'd highly recommend watching this as it's a lovely coming-of-age story with mystery and some fun horror that actually got me pretty spooked at times. S tier. Takopi's Original Sin. Despite being so short, this was really well directed all around, and it's really good, but this is a pretty hard thing for me to recommend. It's a very dark series, and while I am glad that I watched it, there were a few moments that were pretty heavy for me personally. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's why I can't easily recommend this to someone. That being said, while I do like and respect it a lot, I'm not super in love with it. A tier. John Wick. I typically don't watch action films because it's not my thing at all, but I've seen screenshots of the John Wick movies before and I really like the visuals, so I thought I'd start watching them. Unfortunately, I only managed to make time to watch the first movie, and it was alright. It was an enjoyable watch and it was pretty well made. I still want to see the rest at some point, but it's not high on the list. C tier. Demon Slayer Infinity Castle. I remember once this movie started, I spent a good 10 minutes just smiling ear to ear. I was really happy that I got the chance to see this at my theaters, and it was so worth it. I'll admit it's a lot in regards to both the length and pacing, but I feel like on a rewatch I'd enjoy it a lot more than I already do. I'd say the only nitpick I have is that it was hard to track the fight between Giyu and Akaza at times, but other than that, it was a really good movie. I know some people have been saying that it would have been better if they stuck to the show format, and while that may be true, I feel like having 3 movies to finish off the series as a whole is a lot more cooler. S tier. Chainsaw Man, the anime. Again, I already talked about it more extensively in the previous video, so to summarize, it's awesome and it gets a stupid amount of bad rep. Highly recommend it, but I understand it's not for everyone, and I am definitely fine with this information. S tier. Chainsaw Man Reze Arc. An all-around beautiful movie that elevated the source material by tenfold. I can't think of a single problem with this, and I would happily rewatch this again, as it is literal eye candy. S tier. Chainsaw Man, the manga. Part 1 was great and left me in the complete daze for a while. I gotta reread it sometime. Unfortunately, I didn't like part 2 as much. It had a really strong start, but having caught up with it, I feel like there have been some missed opportunities, and the sidecasts for the most part are pretty boring, unfortunately. I'm also just confused with where we are now in the story, but I trust Fujimoto to give this a good ending at the very least. While I feel like it's not as enjoyable as part 1, it still has some pretty good moments and, again, a really great start. So for part 1, I'll be giving it an S tier, but for part 2, I'll be giving it a B tier. Diary of a Wimpy Kid 1 through 4. I'm gonna be lumping these together as well. The first 2 movies are great. I was surprised by how much I loved watching them. It reminded me a lot of old Nickelodeon, and I mean that in a good way. Great actors all around. I do prefer the second movie just a tad bit more from the first one because Roderick's my favorite character. Wow, shocker. But I also really love how his relationship with Greg develops here and that it's still present in the third movie. I was ready for them to just completely reset, but I'm so glad they didn't do that. The third movie was fun too. The dad's actor is super fun to watch, and I'm glad that we got to focus on him and Greg. It wasn't as enjoyable as the first 2 movies, but it was still pretty good. Unfortunately, I didn't like the fourth movie. I get replacing the child actors, but I don't know why the parents had to be changed too. I tried really hard to like the movie despite that, but it just wasn't the same. I felt like there was a severe lack of chemistry between the characters, which you typically don't want in a family-oriented movie. I'm glad that they at least got to focus on the mom, but the dialogue felt more cheesy than usual, and the heartfelt moments fell flat for me, unfortunately. So with that being said, the first movie gets an S tier, second movie, S tier as well, third movie, B tier, and fourth movie, D tier. Over the Garden Wall. I had been wanting to watch this for years, and I'm so glad I finally did. It's the perfect thing to watch around Halloween, and honestly, I teared up while watching it. Partly because of the ending, but also because it's a really beautiful and charming series that reminded me a lot of old Disney animated movies, and the childlike bliss I had while watching those. I was then struck with the realization that something like this isn't really made anymore in the West, as far as I know at least. I'm sure there's some gems out there that I haven't found yet, so I'll have to find some time to look. But to round this up, Over the Garden Wall is a beautiful work of art, and I highly recommend watching it, especially around fall. S tier. Home Alone. Do I even need to praise this? It's one of the best classic Christmas films out there, and I rewatched it recently for the holidays, but since I still remembered the story beats pretty well, it ended up being a bit boring for me, unfortunately. A tier. Home Alone 2. Somehow more gruesome than the first movie. Man got hit in the head with a brick 6 times and fucking died too. I get that this is all slapstick humor, but damn, it's brutal. I actually enjoyed this one more since I remembered it a whole lot less, and it's a great sequel. The Crow Lady's story also resonated with me a lot more than the old man in the first movie, and I really liked her conversation with Kevin as they were having hot chocolate. I really want hot chocolate right now. A tier. FNAF 2, the movie. Now I want to preface this by saying that I actually liked the first movie a lot. It was a bit rough, but still a really enjoyable watch, and because of that, I had pretty high hopes for the second movie. At the very least, I thought it'd be just as fun to watch as the first film, but I got pretty disappointed. The dialogue was really weird, and the plot at some points was confusing. Mike is low-key an asshole here, and I feel like Abby should not have been able to survive whatever she went through at the end. At least the animatronics were cool, and I'm glad that for the most part they're actually physically built. I say for the most part because Mangle was done with CGI, and if I'm being honest, I was only able to know that while watching because I realized this would be stupidly hard and risky to film if it were the real thing, so that is pretty cool. But then again, I'm not good at differentiating between good and bad CGI. I'm a little dumb and naive in that department. But besides that, the movie was a bit disappointing, and I hope the next one will be better. I was really excited to hear MatPat voicing Toy Bonnie, but with how much they changed his voice, it barely sounded like him at all. To the point where I thought I was misinformed and had to check afterwards if he was actually in the film. My favorite part from this was when the Freddy plushie went or, and seeing Corey make another cameo. C tier. Severance and Collapse. S tier. What's Severance and Collapse? I'm glad you asked. Anyways, with that, the tier list is done. This was a really self-indulgent thing to make, but I'm glad I didn't back out of it. It was fun to reflect and write about all of these without having to make a full video for every single thing listed here. I want to try to make this a yearly thing if I can, and I'm excited to see what my list is going to be for 2026. Hoping to hop on some more older stuff this year. And I hope this inspires any fellow creatives out there to start consuming more long-form media outside of YouTube. I don't want to sound like an echo chamber and say social media bad, because it's fine to use it in small amounts and we're all human, we gotta watch some shit at the end of the day. But seeing mostly the same things regurgitated is gonna stunt your creativity a lot. So that'll be all for today. I hope you all have a great day or night wherever you are, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye!